People in my small town tend to disappear when they venture too far out past the city limits. The abandoned farmland that sits between our town and the Florida Everglades, to be exact. This farmland, haunted farmland, some would tell you, has been off limits for the past 15 years. The official story goes that a little over 15 years ago, a farmer disturbed an ancient aquifer while drilling a well. The water in the aquifer broke free and opened a sinkhole that swallowed him and his wife. The unofficial story, the one told late at night in hushed tones, goes that the farmer disturbed an ancient Native American burial ground while digging his well and brought down a curse down upon himself, his family, and the entire town. Most people in the town know someone who vanished after traveling too close to the old farm. Curiosity is dangerous. Over the past 15 years, our small town has learned to mind our own business. It is common knowledge that you should stay off the old farmland and no one gets hurt. Every so often the state police will roll through, usually asking about hunters or campers that disappeared near the abandoned farm. They never find anything and eventually lose interest. People in my small town tend to disappear when they venture too far out past the city limits. The abandoned farmland that sits between our town and the Florida Everglades, to be exact. This farmland, haunted farmland, some would tell you, has been off limits for the past 15 years. The official story goes that a little over 15 years ago, a farmer disturbed an ancient aquifer while drilling a well. By the time they were 16, most guys in my town claimed to have spent a night out on the old farm. Most lied about it, but no 16-year-old boy would admit that they were too terrified of the old farm. So, the charade continued through the years. Guys would gang up and bully those who they suspected had never been onto the farm. It usually ended up being me, the one that the other guys would gang up on like a pack of wolves. High school was hell. The students, even the teachers, treated me as if I was a leaper. Taunts, jibes, and occasionally pushes and punches followed me throughout the school day. By my senior year of high school, the cruelest bullies had a perfect for their art. A group of them would see me approaching and loudly discuss the last time they had snuck out onto the abandoned farm. They would talk about it, how easy it was to get onto the farm, and that only a true coward would be afraid of the farm. Then they would all turn to me and ask why I had not been there. Their taunts had no limits, their cruelty only constrained by their creativity. I was the only guy in my high school that was upfront about never visiting the abandoned farm. It was my family that used to own the old farm, my father who disappeared along with my mother. Only 3 years old at the time, I moved in with my grandmother afterwards. I have always been regarded by the town as an outsider, someone to be pitied. Though they would never say it out loud, the town viewed me as somehow responsible for the disappearances, despite me being only 3 years old at the time of the original incident. Everything changed Halloween night of my senior year of high school. Junior Ravner, the captain of the baseball team, rounded up his buddies and hatched a plan. They had a Halloween prank that will go down in town history. Well, they were right. This town will never forget what happened that night. As usual, I was their target of choice. I can understand why. I had no friends to back me up. The teachers, hell, pretty much the whole town hated my family. No one would come in my defense. In fact, they all enjoyed a good laugh at my expense. The baseball team went to state finals that year, so Junior and his cronies could get away with anything. I must give them credit. They put a lot of effort into planning their prank. They had the audacity to kidnap me from the front steps of my grandmother's house on Halloween night. I answered the door, expecting to see a few kids in costumes their parents had bought from Walmart. Instead, I was greeted by 3 giants wearing grotesque clown masks. The tallest clown, whose mask was done to look like Pennywise from the movie It, pulled me out of the house and pushed me down to the front stoop onto the grass. My fight or flight instincts kicked in, and of course I tried to run, but there's no running from Junior Ravner, a top University of Florida recruit. He caught up to me easily and knocked me over, giving me a good kick in the stomach as he taunted me. Cowering like the dog you are, before bending down to put a burlap sack over my head. I could smell the beer on their breath as they shoved me into the trunk of their Ford SUV.
"We're gonna scare the crap out of you tonight, boy,"
said one of Junior's cronies. Probably Todd Ripper, judging from his Mississippi drawl. It didn't take a genius to guess where we were going. Life in this town revolves around the old abandoned farm, even though no one talks about it and rarely ventures close to it. The bumpiness of the ride told me that the SUV had turned off the main road and onto the neglected farm road that had led to the main farmhouse. Another 5 minutes and the SUV has pulled to a stop, and Junior and his friend jumped out of the SUV, whooping and hollering. "Kid, I'm out of here, boys," yelled Junior. The trunk opened and a pair of strong hands grabbed me by the shoulders and yanked me out of the trunk onto the soft ground. I slowly stood up and started to take my hood off, but was interrupted with a swift punch in the stomach. "What the hell you think you're doing, you yellow-bellied prick?" chuckled Todd as he pulled me to my feet again. "Do what you're told, and maybe we won't post a video on this of YouTube," Junior said. Well, my reputation in this town cannot get any worse, so that's an idle threat. I did find it a little funny, though, that bullying has gone high-tech. I stood as still as possible, hoping to avoid giving them another reason to hit me. I resigned myself to a night of humiliation and discomfort. Do what they say, don't make them angry, I thought to myself. Maybe I could run away if they got too drunk or became distracted. Junior said, "Okay, let's get going. I don't have all night here," and roughly pushed me forward. I obliged and slowly put one foot forward and then the other, carefully taking each step so as not to trip and fall. "Come on, you wuss, walk faster," said a new voice that I did not recognize. "Can't see where I'm going. I'd be able to go faster if I didn't have this hood on," I said so softly as not to give any of them a reason to punch me again. Someone grabbed the hood and ripped it off, taking a few of my hairs with it. I looked up to see Chris Hepley, my next-door neighbor and my best friend throughout elementary school, holding the hood. He had stopped talking to me in 8th grade, an age when popularity and girls win out over childhood friendships. Just as I had suspected, they had taken me to the old abandoned farm. The abandoned farmhouse stood in front of us, creepily illuminated by the fog lights of Junior's SUV. Graffiti covered the walls of the house, and broken glass lay beyond shattered windows. Decades of trash and debris lay strewn about the overgrown lawn. Todd picked up another beer and was about to hand me over when Junior cursed and said, "Why the hell are we letting this clown drink with us? What happened to the plan? We can't let him get off this easy." Chris shifted uneasily and said, I didn't think you were serious, man. He could get hurt or worse." Todd giggled and said with a slur in his voice, "Oh, you trying to protect the kindergarten bestie now? Man up, go home. The road is that way," said Junior as he pointed over his shoulder with his thumb. Chris looked down at the ground but didn't say anything. I knew I was in trouble, and I didn't want to stick around to find out what Junior had planned for me. "Todd, get that rope out of the truck. Let's get going. I don't want to be here all night. I want to get over to that party before the keg runs out," said Junior. Todd stumbled over to the back of the SUV in a drunken stupor, but couldn't figure out how to open the trunk. "Damn it," muttered Junior through clenched teeth as he stumped over to the back of the SUV. I knew that was my only chance. I didn't want to stick around and find out what Junior had in store for me. I slowly began back away from Chris, who looked at me but said nothing. I silently thanked him, spun around, and sprinted off into the darkness. 30 seconds later, I hear a loud curse and knew that Junior had learned about my escape. I had to find some place to hide, since there was no way I could outrun them. The problem is, there isn't any place to hide on the farm, wide open and surrounded land by the farmhouse, which I was running away from. Junior tackled me 2 minutes later at the edge of the small pond where my father had tried to dig a well so many years ago. Junior pushed my face into soft ground and twisted my arms behind my back. "Give me that rope now, Todd," said Junior. Todd, breathing heavily from the run, looked like he was going to throw up. All that beer sloshing around in his stomach, I guess. Junior tied my hands behind my back tightly, the nylon rope digging into my wrists and cutting off circulation into my hands. He held the other end of the rope in his hand. He gave the rope a jerk and said, "You are not going anywhere now. Get you on a flash like a lead, jello bully dog you are." I stood facing Junior and Todd and saw Chris walking up from behind them. He was about 15 feet away when the earth beneath his feet dropped a few inches and a pale hand with blackened fingernails reached up through the damp as soil and grabbed onto Chris' ankle and jerked downwards. Chris screamed and jumped forwards, managing to free his ankle from the grasp of whatever lay beneath him. Junior looked back and said, "What the hell is wrong with you?" "Well, man, something grabbed my foot in back there. I think my ankle's sprained," said Chris, wincing as he gingerly prodded his ankle. Junior said, "You're starting to sound more and more like this coward. You snagged off your foot on a root. You've had too many beers, you lightweight." Chris began to respond, but stopped when two grotesque hands again emerged from the ground and grabbed both of Chris' ankles and slowly pulled Chris down into a widening hole. Chris screamed and tried to rip his legs free, all the while sinking deeper into the soil. Junior and Todd sprinted forward and each grabbed one of Chris's hands. "Pull! Pull!" yelled Junior. Chris's screams intensified. Now waist deep into the ground, his eyes bulged as blood began to dribble from his mouth. "Todd, pull, damn it!" screamed Junior with a crazed look in his eyes. Together they pulled and brought Chris back out of the narrow hole that had formed. His leg was broken, and his right leg had what looked like jagged bite marks running up and down of it. I stood up and took a few steps forward. They had pulled Chris out of a small tunnel with smooth, oily walls that went down for 4 feet before taking a 90-degree turn towards the old farmhouse. "Use this rope to stop bleeding from his legs," I said. Chris, with eyes glazed over, lay moaning on the ground, and Junior looked at me for a moment before untying my hands and wrapping the rope tightly around Chris's legs. "Todd, you got your phone on you?" asked Junior. I think it's in the back of the truck," slurred Todd. "Mine too. Run back and get them. Bring them back to me. I'll wait here and watch over Chris." Todd hesitated for a moment, looking down at Chris, and then off the SUV in the distance. Junior cursed and threw his empty beer at Todd. "What the hell you waiting for? Get going." Todd zigzagged across the open field, hopping, skipping, and doubling check every few feet, trying to avoid whatever horror lurked beneath him. He finally reached the SUV, and a few minutes later began hopping and skipping his way back towards us. Todd was about 10 feet away when he abruptly disappeared. Junior, his face ghost white, said to me, "Go and see what happened there." I took 3 long strides forward and saw that Todd had disappeared into a hole that looked identical to the hole that they pulled Chris out of. It went down for a feet and then veered off towards the old farmhouse. Junior looked down at Chris lying on the ground and 2 long steps to look into the hole that Todd had disappeared into. He said to me, "Walk towards the truck slowly. I'll follow behind you. I'll break your leg if you try to run and leave you here. You hear me?" "Sure," I murmur, and then a little more loudly, "What about Chris?" Chris had regained consciousness and began to plead with Junior to take him with us. Junior refused, saying to Chris, "You're safer here. Trust me on this, man." "No, no, no, no," screamed Chris, and then looked at me and said with a look of pure terror in his face, "You have to listen to me. They're coming back for me. I can hear them slithering underneath us, listening, waiting till I'm alone again." Junior looked at Chris and then turned to me and shoved me towards the SUV. "Start walking slowly." I began to walk forwards, concentrating on each step. I could hear Chris behind us, begging us to come back, and then nothing. I didn't dare around to look, but I heard Junior curse, and I knew that Chris was now 4 feet beneath us. "Hurry up, get to the truck, and we'll get out of here together," Junior said as he gave a hard shove. I doubted that Junior would take me with him, would probably leave me here to suffer the same fate as Chris and Todd. He would likely find a way to blame me for their disappearances. I knew, though, that running off on my own was the worst thing I could do, so I decided to go along with Junior and hoped that an opportunity for escape would present itself. He turned on me and punched me in the side of the head. "This is all your fault. If you hadn't run away from us, this never would have happened. You are going to pay for this," he grunted as he punched me in the mouth, this time knocking me to the ground. I turned over, spitting blood out of my mouth, and kicked him as hard as I could in the groin, and immediately sprinted into the old farmhouse. "I'm going to kill you!" Junior screamed after me with an hysterical laugh. I knew that he would kill me if he got a hold of me, so I sprinted through the abandoned house looking for the door to the basement. Memories from my early childhood came rushing back as I sprinted through the farmhouse. If I could find some place to hide, to wait him out, then I might be able to get out of this alive. The first door I tried led into a closet, but the second door opened up into a pitch-black basement. I hurtled down the wooden steps, hoping that the rotten wood would hold up under my weight, and heard Junior crash through the front door of the farmhouse. I felt around the basement, searching for a good place to hide myself. I found a smaller clove near the old coal chute and draped an old canvas over my body that sat huddled in the corner of the damp basement. The footsteps above me stopped, and I knew that Junior had found a door to the basement. The steps into the basement began to groan under the weight of Junior, and a sharp crack accompanied by a loud curse told me that one of the rotten steps had buckled under Junior's weight. My eyes adjusted to the small amount of moonlight shining into the basement through the boarded-up windows. The faint outline of a limping Junior came to sight, one hand out in front of him as he blindly felt around. In the other hand, he held what looked like a crowbar. He called out, "Why are you hiding? I just want to talk. I know how we can get out of here if we work together." I watched Junior hobble across the basement and kept my deathly silent, looking for a chance to sprint up the stairs and out of the farmhouse. My heart missed a beat when I saw movement out of the corner of my eye on the other side of the basement. In the darkness, I could see 2 black figures crawl out of a hole in the wall and pull 2 bodies out of the hole behind them, which hit the floor like a bag of concrete. Junior twirled around towards the sound, crowbar raised high overhead. I know that's you, you goddamn coward. One of the bodies on the floor moaned and gasped. Junior, they ate my eyes. They ate them. Please help me. Help me. I ripped the canvas off and sprinted up the stairs, careful to avoid the broken step, and praying that the others would hold up. I reached the top of the staircase, slammed the door behind me and locked the door. I soon heard footsteps crashing up the stairs and watched as the doorknob rattled. I knew I should run away while the creatures below were occupied, but morbid curiosity kept my eyes glued on the door. Hey, open the door. They're at the bottom of the stairs. Oh God, they're horrible. Disgusting. You should have done. You should have seen what they did to Chris and Todd. Please. I stood there silent. Junior cursed and drove the crowbar through the wooden door again and again until there was a hole large enough to fit his hand through. He reached through and twisted the lock open. His hand spasmed, and a sickening crunch was followed by an ear-splitting scream. The door swung open slowly, and Junior came into view. Blood gushed down at the side of his face, a large bite mark where his left eye had been. He took a step forward, looking at me with a remaining eye, until a rotting hand with a sharp black fingernail wrapped around his ankle and pulled him back into the black basement. The door closed with a loud bang, which awoke me from my trance. I sprinted out of the old farmhouse and back towards the main road, blocking out the shrill screaming rising out of the basement, and ignoring the fact that the grotesque hand had grabbed Junior's ankle wore the same turquoise ring that I had seen in my father's old